Hi everyone, and welcome to your first lecture. Today we'll be covering a few things. You're going to get in a little bit of a brief introduction to the course and generally what we're going to be striving for with that, and put some context around the big goal for the semester for you for this course. And then we'll dive into a little bit of qualitative models, and in particular a bit more detail on one called a QMD, or Qualitative Movement Diagnosis. And it should become obvious why that's a main focus for this lecture in this course. But ultimately, a lot of the information today is primarily going to be introductory. Okay, we're going to have another lecture. Your next lecture is going to be diving into details on the qualitative methods and how we're going to use that and leverage that both for an assignment early on in the semester for you, as well as your final project, and a bit more details around that. So you'll have more supporting information there. But again, today is just largely introduction to a number of things for you. Okay. So without further ado, we'll get you introduced to our course goals and how some of this information that we'll cover today later in the course is going to support you in essentially you yourselves developing a integrated movement model, or a process at which you can analyze a particular movement. So if you haven't already, or if you're not involved in a particular sport currently, start thinking of something, a skill, a type of element, or something from a sport that you might be interested in analyzing in greater detail. And you start at least narrowing it down to three choices by the time we get going into your assignment and other aspects of the course. Everything's going to be able to tie back to that, and you'll be able to progress it along really well and be really efficient with your choice and the work that you do starting from early in the course. Okay. So just as the title suggests, we're going to integrate all sorts of components of kinesiology into analyzing movement. And the main part of that here is going to be something that's titled IMAG. So you're going to use an evidence-based approach, and I'll explain more what that is, to develop an integrated movement analysis guideline. And so this guideline that you'll be making will be very unique. You know, it's kind of a bit of a gap in kinesiology and sports science at the moment, where there's lots of science out there, but they're all quite separated into their own sub-disciplines of kinesiology. So when you go to apply it in the real world to whatever job you want to pursue, there's this big gap in how do we take the science from all these different fields and apply it to functionally helping someone improve in their movement skill, whatever that happens to be. So you get to be pioneers, and that's the exciting part, is you also get to be pioneers and develop something in an area or a sport that you're most interested in. Okay. And the big key to that is evidence-based. So a lot this is all home base for me as far as where I did my master's degree in. So the subject area was evidence-based practice, in particular for myself for rehabilitation. But you can take these same principles, the same model, and apply it to any scenario. So that's a really exciting aspect and course outcome that you all get to enjoy at the end of the semester. So the guidelines are going to be largely based on a qualitative movement diagnosis, so your QMD. Now, because it's going to be integrated, is not purely going to be qualitative, but the foundation is going to be there. And it'll become more clear as we go through the course and we describe more what a QMD is. But ultimately, what we're going to be doing is something of a blended model. So even though, and one of the reasons this and the next lectures are really important is to fully understand what qualitative is relative to quantitative, and then how we're going to blend those two together. We're going to have a number of lectures on that. So ultimately the goal, the large encompassing goal of this course is to develop this IMAP, or this Integrated Movement Analysis Project, right? And this guideline that you're going to come up with, again, is going to be like a manual or like a how-to. Analyze, look, observe, and then fundamentally correct and integrate and improve someone's movement. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, I love science. I love this scientific method, and that's exactly the approach that this takes. So systematically, empirically, analyzing a movement and moving forward with it. And one of the big key factors about this is right now in the real world, there's so much information out there. So many people, very well-intentioned coaches and practitioners who have this theory that they put out in the world. And a lot of it typically is just from expert opinion. So a lot of us have experienced this in sport over our lifetime. Guaranteed, 100%. You can think about any sport you did as a kid or a teenager or even now, and I don't have a statistic to put behind it, but it is a large number of coaches that essentially coach what they've been coached. They teach what they teach. They might integrate a little bit of their own experiences. They might be pulling from a number of different coaches, but ultimately a large component of what we're taught as athletes, generally speaking, is not evidence-based. There's some people now that do that a little bit more, but you look at the personal training world, the influence of YouTube and TikTok and all these other social media platforms that put a lot of information content out, but isn't always necessarily science-based. So that's the big thing for all of you this semester to really engage and dig into is this research, this systematic collection of empirical data. So that's measurable data that you can. Again, the really big point about this IMAP is the exploration that you get to do. So yes, you're pioneers, but it also means a lot of this course is very self-directed. So I'm always here as a resource. Your lab facilitator will be here as a resource, but at the end of the day, the key to this is managing your own workload. Yes, there's steps that you can do along the way and assignments that will help keep you moving forward, but ultimately it's really self-directed. So try to keep that in mind as you're developing this model and trying to time manage throughout the course. Okay, so in the last slide, as I was mentioning, and where my background is in evidence-based practice, okay, EBP. And to give you a little bit more information of what that is and what it's all about and how you can literally apply it to anything in your life as a base approach and principle and stand to benefit from it, is if we start by looking at the classic evidence-based practice model. Okay, so EBP. Why is it a classic model? Well, originally it's developed for healthcare, in particular medicine. Okay, so we start with taking whatever the best science is, and that's great. But there's a lot of errors that can occur if we just take every single study and try to apply it. You can probably take a look at nutrition and just see where that could go wrong. So there's so much information out about nutrition, all of it stating so many things are great for you, so many things are also not great for you, and they tend to be the same things. And that really comes down to the application of science. Okay, it's not all, these studies aren't saying, for example, carbs are good or not good, or as a blanket statement for everyone in the entire world. Typically what they are is trying to demonstrate that for a particular situation, context, and subject or participant in the study, it is or is not so great for whatever reasons it happens to be. So that's where these two other aspects come into play. So clinical experience, that again originally was speaking about whoever the practitioner is generally speaking, the doctor. But when you take a look also at the patient, or in our case, if we want to start transferring it over to what we're doing in this class, the athlete or the mover or whoever is doing the action or performing the skill. Okay, and it's not just their values, but who they are biologically, sociologically, and psychologically, right? So we have these three components, the pillars of evidence-based practice, and really the best way to go about practicing a scientific approach to life, really. I will extend it that far. That's a bold statement, I know, but you really can. So again, taking you, the practitioner's experience, the patient's lived experience and values, and trying to take the science and see how to apply all three. Okay, and this is what we're going to be doing with your models. Okay. So I already mentioned way back here that our primary basis for this IMAP, or IMEG, sorry, I've been saying that wrong. This IMEG is a qualitative movement diagnosis. So qualitative being the key word. But I already mentioned that it's going to be a blended model. You're going to need both aspects. So let's take a second here. We'll review what either are, and just to get that set in our minds. I'm sure you've come across these terms by now. So qualitative is contextual, thematic, and descriptive. So really using words, right? So how was your experience shopping at Best Buy today? Good, okay, terrible, whatever. Those are descriptive words, right? It's contextual. If we're talking about thematic, you can think of a story, right? You can say the theme of The Outsiders, if you read it in high school, is a coming of age tale, so that's the theme, right? So general trends that are from all the descriptive words collected, all that data. Okay, so that's qualitative. So the quality of something, qualitative. When you look at quantitative, a quantity, that's a number, right? So numerical data, statistics, evaluative. Out of 10, how do you rate your pain today if you're a doctor asking a patient that, right? 5 out of 10, 10 out of 10, okay? Hopefully not. So that's quantitative, okay? There's the differences between the two. And so for a long time, historically, and in all of science, everything's been very skewed, especially in science and scientific community, is towards quantitative. Show us the numbers, measure it, or it's not worthy. There's a very strong bias towards that. But of late, I'd say within the past 5, maybe 10 years in research, a lot of value has been found in qualitative data and qualitative research. And I think largely that's because the rigor and the test of quality that qualitative data has been held to, the standards has become a bit more rigorous and a bit more clear and better defined. And as you'll see, there's a lot of information that we can gain from qualitative information that we can't from quantitative. Okay. So I had this photo here. I haven't really been tying that in, but quantitative would be how fast, as far as time, did these sprints happen? Great. Qualitative, how did you feel? How hard was your effort doing this hurdle sprint? Everyone seems to be working a pretty good 9 or 10 out of 10 in this sprint or hurdle event here. That would be quantitative. They could also say hard, very hard, extremely hard, right? And that would be the qualitative. Great. How did you feel about winning? Qualitative. How did you feel about losing? Qualitative, right? Okay. Great. So to integrate the two, we can look at something, for example, like gait analysis or walking analysis. And really we can have a bit of a spectrum. And I'm going to call upon some wording that you might have recall maybe from biomechanics, and that's kinematics and kinetics. Okay. So we'll start with a bit more qualitative side of things. Kinematics is explaining movement, so any movement, without the use of forces. So we don't regard our force or the mass or the acceleration of something and its force produced with kinematics. So it's very descriptive. So what we can do with that is the pelvis rotates right as the right leg comes forward. Then the trunk counter rotates as that leg swing comes through. So those sorts of things. So so this is where a lot of the qualitative movement diagnosis typically lies. Like this is the majority of it, right? So in the word qualitative, right here. As we move forward to a little bit more quantitative, we can still describe movement, so kinematics, but by using temporal or spatial measurements. So we need numbers for these, right? Seconds, degrees, meters. These are all temporal or spatial, and they describe movement, but with numbers, okay, but no forces. All right, then last but not least, we have our kinetics. So that's anything with force: ground reaction force, power, torques. You could, that's kind of the primary ones that we use. Okay, and so to give a truly integrated model of gait analysis, you really want to try to use everything and combine them, right? That kind of seems pretty daunting with how many different variables we can look at, right? But the reason I wanted to show you this and kind of set that stage and understanding is when you're going through your models and developing your models is I want you to be really clear in your head what aspect you're actually analyzing and how that relates to the overall movement you're trying to analyze. Okay, so and ultimately, if you're trying to make a qualitative model or one that's a bit qualitatively based, you're going to want to make sure that you're in the right realm and tying these other supporting variables to that. Okay, so that seems a little maybe daunting, maybe a little abstract at the moment, but let's look at how that's done. Okay, how do we integrate these two things? And again, we'll have a more detailed lecture fully on this, but to introduce this concept and this framework for you right now, let's do that just so we can get the ball rolling. Okay, so ultimately at the end of the day, you're doing a mixed method research for your IMAG, right? Your integrative movement analytical guideline. Okay, so with these mixed methods research, there's different ways that we can take your qualitative and quantitative research, depending on what it is, and combine them. Okay, and these are the three, and we'll look through each of them now. Okay. So initially we have an exploratory sequential model, and really what that is you take your qualitative data, so again your words, whatever they are, and then you find some sort of quantitative numbers to back it up, and you interpret. So for example, if I was doing some market research and I wanted to find out what shoppers' experiences were at a store, I could be like, how was your experience today in shopping? And they'd say like good or not good. And then from there, you could get some quantitative data and be like, okay, out of 10, how good or how not so good would you rate it? Like 10 being great, 1 being not so good. Okay, and you can get some more numbers to support that, and you have your interpretation. Maybe okay was actually a 3 out of 10. So you gain a little bit more insight and a little bit more precision into the feedback that you're trying to gather. Okay. So the way that works too, as far as exploratory, is you can usually refine or get a larger gathering of information beyond the scope of what you might originally ask for. So qualitative data as far as exploratory would be something like if you do a poll online and just ask people to tell you their favorite activity to do while traveling traveling abroad. Okay, so they might include activities that you wouldn't have thought to originally include in your research. Maybe people really enjoy parasailing, but you never would have thought to have included that. Okay, so that's why it's exploratory. And then from there, you can put it on your list of rank your top activities on a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, and then you have your list that way. So to vary that a little bit, or look at that in a slightly different way or opposing way, we have an explanatory sequential model. So at first we get some quantitative data. So again, let's go back to shopping. You're in the store, shopper rates feedback 3 out of 10. Okay, so how was your shopping experience? 3 out of 10. So you have this number that's quantitative. But why? Why was it 3 out of 10? So if once you start trying to explain the numbers you obtain by collecting qualitative data, you can gain a more robust and better understanding of that information. So quantitative data. So 3 out of 10. Oh, why was it a 3 out of 10 today? Can you tell us more? Well, I didn't like the way that there's this one customer that came in and ran around and threw a bunch of stuff off the shelves and ran out. It really stressed me out. Well, yeah, of course that did. So now, does that say something about the store and the experience they provided, or was that really just a one-off? Conversely, on the other way around, they say 3 out of 10. Oh, the person at the till was very, very rude or made me wait a long time. 3 out of 10. Well, now you know that there's something actionable in your company that you could change. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little more detail how these sequential versions of the model occur. Okay, and ultimately what I'm also hoping that did was illustrate how having just one form, either a qualitative or quantitative bit of information, really can leave a lot of holes or gaps in your understanding of whatever you're researching. And I would say, in particular, when it comes to human behavior. Okay. Now this is the big moment, the one that I hope you've all been waiting for, is convergent parallel design. I know you're just like, there's something that's missing here, Sean, and I haven't heard it yet. This is it. Okay. This really is ultimately going to be your approach to your IMAGs, okay? So your integrative movement analysis guidelines that you're developing, okay? So how does that look? Well, you essentially collect both the qualitative and quantitative data, okay? And what we're going to be doing through the semester isn't purely this, but at the end product, it's going to be kind of like this, okay? So you're going to have your quantitative and your qualitative, and you're going to have to compare, relate, and combine all the information you had to develop your end interpretation of your project or your guidelines features, okay? Okay, so what does that kind of look like practically for all of you? Great question. Well, we're going to have components in particular early on where you're going to be starting with a qualitative data collection, and that's going to be ongoing throughout the semester, okay? But then we're going to put you in the lab, and you're going to empirically measure and collect quantitative data on a number of different variables. Your labs are going to set you up with capacity to know how to execute and understand and interpret all these quantitative aspects. And then you're going to have the freedom to pick and choose what you think is most applicable to your skill. Okay? So we got these two components. This is mainly second, or getting into the just after reading break, or second part of this semester. This is definitely the first part of the semester. And then you're going to take both and say, okay, where does my qualitative data support and build on my quantitative data? What does my quantitative data do to support and facilitate my qualitative data? Okay, and where they converge is your model. That's what you want to build upon, and that's what you want to expand on. Okay, and ultimately, a lot of students, they do these components are really great, but they get to the second and third component, and not all students connect those dots. Okay, and if you're really like gunning for that A plus sort of project, this is crucial, absolutely positively crucial to compare, relate, or interpret. Okay. Great. So convergent parallel design. And I think that's good to understand heading into this whole semester. Like this is providing the framework and your approach to develop your model. Okay. So when, again, we're doing maybe quantitative activities and they seem a little isolated, try to remember that you're going to tie it into your qualitative data and your overall guideline that you're developing. Okay, great. Okay, so let's pause. So that was kind of an introduction to the class, introduction to the paradigm or perspective that I'm hoping you have and take with you throughout the duration of the semester. Gave you little snippets and sneak peeks of qualitative data as well as your QMD or the qualitative movement diagnosis approach, as well as what your approach is going to be a little bit more with your IMAG. But we'll do another little preview here with a bit more detail on how you're going to be expected to utilize qualitative research in your IMAG. And then we'll also look in greater detail what the QMD is and what it involves. Okay, so we got two kind of points here that we're going to cover in the remainder of the lecture here. Okay. So qualitative methods here, and we'll briefly talk about models, but mainly the main model is your QMD, and that has a few submodels in there. But as we're going through all this information, again, the best thing that you can glean or understand or take away from this in order to apply for yours is having a better understanding of qualitative methods and how you're going to be using that. And again, next day we're going to be going over the assignment in detail as well as the lecture, really providing a bit more deeper understanding of what qualitative methods are and how you're going to be using that. But also using the models as a framework for your model potentially, or a framework as to your approach that you're going to be taking to develop your model. Okay. So why qualitative methods? Well, it provides insight to the why behind a lot of quantitative numbers or information that can't be very well explained with a why or with a number, right? And what is that? Well, it's a person's experience, their perspective, or deeper meanings behind anything like their attitudes, behaviors, anything really. So why and when is this useful really? Well, ultimately, it's when understanding a person's lived experience is important. And what do I mean by that? Well, we can look at things, for example, like people battling cancer. Okay, so we can often get certain numbers, if we wanted to, on a quantitative scale about their lived experience, right? So how happy were you if we ask them to track day to day, how happy are you out of 10? Throughout your treatment experience. 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever. Okay, well, not 12, but you get the idea. So you get this collection of numbers. Okay, on average, people undergoing cancer treatment tend to have a happiness scale of 6 out of 10. Okay, well, that doesn't really explain much, does it? We just know generally 6 out of 10. But if you end up doing a little bit of qualitative research and ask them why, what was good about your day, what was not good about your day, you tend to learn a lot more. Now, the things that you'll get as answers will be, I found it, I was really struggling with stress and anxiety because of fear of cancer ending my life. Okay, well, that's a pretty clear and obvious one. But, you could also see that maybe some survivors or people battling cancer tend to have very high happiness scales while going through treatment, because their answers might be, I really value time with my family today more than I have in the past. That's a beautiful thing. That's great. So again, getting a 6 out of 10 or whatever it might be might not really explain the full story if we were to just collect a number. Okay. Similarly, I think that illustrates the point pretty good. But anytime you have anything that's personal or a lived experience, ultimately can be better collected and better understood with qualitative methods. Three methods that we'll use in this course is going to be interview, reflective practice, and observation. Those are the big three. There's lots of other methods out there, and I know you have a course that looks into research methods, and you'll definitely get more depth there. But this is the three primarily that we'll use. Now, am I saying these are the only three you can use in this course? Absolutely not. If you really feel that a focus group or something like that is going to be really, really valuable to understanding your movement, great, go for it. I would love to see that. That's really great stuff. Okay. Anyway, so we'll look at each of three here in detail, or starting detail anyway. So the first one's reflective practice. Now, this is a big one as far as gaining insight into the researcher or the practitioner. Now, this is a really important one. We're going to come back to it. You're going to be doing your assignment on this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it here now. But just to introduce the idea, when you're doing qualitative research, the person collecting the data typically acts as a bit of an interpreter. And that person, the researcher or data collector qualitatively, usually needs to check themselves for their own biases and interpretations of the information coming in. Because otherwise it just turns into someone giving you information, and because you're the combine that just kind of churns out the interpreted data, you might be a filter that totally skews what reality is. And so we'll cover this next day, but there's lots of checks and bounds for that. And one of them is reflective practice, okay? Going back, reviewing your own information, reviewing logs and thought processes of how you arrived at your answers or your conclusions, and being really critical about them in your own process and your own thinking, okay? That's one way. The other way is when we're trying to apply it in practice. So reflective practice or journaling or whatever format that you take is important as a practitioner, because it allows you to move from a novice to an expert level much quicker. And because you log and journal certain experiences, you reflect on them, you're essentially re-experiencing and relearning and improving in a quicker amount of time, or learning in a shorter amount of time, because you're redoing the same experience more than once. Okay, how does that kind of look? Well, this graph kind of explains it a little bit. So you have this action, you reflect on it, you conceptualize why did it happen, what you might do differently next time, and then how. And then you have a chance to apply that the next time that same scenario arises. And so then you act a certain way next time, and then et cetera, et cetera. So typically, instead of just acting and continuing on without this pause, this cycle to go through, what will end up happening is it takes more times for this action to occur. So you have to act and act and act and act and act, whatever that happens to be in your practice. More times than you would if you actually went through this cycle, because this is reliving the action again, right? So you get to minimize that time. Okay. So again, you develop your own insights and become more expert quicker. That's one point. The second point with reflective practice is you get to critically rehash your logic and therefore provide qualitative data with more rigor. Okay, those are the 2 points. Interview. So again, we're talking about qualitative methods here, the ones you'll be using. So interview. Interview is going to be like a standard interview that you would imagine for a job. However, this is in and around your research point, whatever it happens to be. And when you're talking about trying to gain insight to a person's experience, interview is key. So as a coach, in particular with elite athletes, so high-level athletes that have been doing their sport for a decade or more, for multiple hours a day, let alone weeks, they're usually really great sources of information. When everything from their own lived experiences to how movement is actually done. So this is kind of a big one when you're talking about your IMEGs, right? The models you'll be building. So what is it about the movement that this person just did that they thought was good? Oh, well, let's say it's a baseball swing. Oh, yeah, well, I thought I really leaned, like the timing was really good and I felt really good momentum. Bat felt like it was moving fast. Okay. So now you've gained some information on potential critical features that might really support a good movement. But again, this can only really be done with expert athletes. They tend to have it most dialed in. Okay. The second part about interviews is they usually need to be done over time. So again, this is one of the reasons why when you're doing your reflective journaling in your first assignment, it's generally going to be something that you continue all the way till the end of the semester. And the reason for that is, as you can imagine, your thoughts and approaches will change. Someone's lived experience will change over a certain amount of time. So if you're able to follow someone over that amount of time, you get a broader picture and a better understanding. It's not like a photograph of one moment in time. It's a bit more like longitudinal research design. So you get a better average, running average. Okay, and a focus group is similar to an interview. You just do it with, say, a whole sports team as you go through something. Okay, which can be really useful if you're trying to find norms. So like what's a social norm for a certain group that can be elicited really well through focus groups. Okay. Now the third, and certainly not last, form of qualitative research methods is observation. Now this is huge if you really, especially for movement and movement analysis, because ultimately, again, you're trying to make a guide. And what is the number one most common way that any movement practitioner utilizes or leverages? Observation. The number one thing. Coaches on the sideline watching players, right? Very, very commonplace. Maybe occasionally supported with video, but definitely just observational skills. Video recording is a bit of a observation. It's just recorded. What else? Physiotherapists, they'll observe someone walking and then make assessments, right? So observation is really, really key. And one of the best ways to apply observation is when you're trying to gain insight into a participant about something they don't really know about, or they can't tell you, or they won't. So what do I mean by that? Well, amateur athletes, right? So an unskilled mover or athlete will perform a skill, and they really, because they're new, they don't really know what they did or didn't do well, typically, right? So, and this can be, I think that makes sense. So the best way to be able to observe what's actually going on is to observe. Okay? And this will be a crucial aspect as to how you go about developing your model, okay, is observation. Okay. Qualitative movement diagnosis. This is going to be a cornerstone or foundation as to what you build your models off of and around. Okay? So a lot of the QMD, as the name suggests, is qualitative. So using descriptive words to, one, like observe, analyze, and then correct movement. Okay. So we looked at 3 methods of research beforehand. Now this is a way of both collecting information about a movement, but then also applying it, okay, and correcting it. So it's a systematic observation of introspective. Again, qualitative means using descriptive terms. So the introspective part and the judgment comes from inside the observer. Judgment of quality of human movement with the purpose of providing most appropriate intervention to performance. So if you think about it, this is really what you're after with your models, right? You want to systematically observe something. You'll end up making a judgment and then figuring out how to intervene to improve performance. Side note, as far as improving performance, it can also be preventing injury. Okay, so both are kind of hand in hand. Anytime you see improve performance or become more efficient with performance, you should also understand that means becoming more efficient. Okay, and so ultimately, right here at the center of all our subdisciplines, or these 4 subdisciplines in particular of kinesiology, rests our qualitative movement diagnosis. Okay, and again, this is just a model that's using a qualitative approach. Okay, so we're going to go through and you can pause and go back and or we'll be exploring each of those aspects a little bit more as we go through the course-ish, but ultimately I just want to do a little maybe mini review of each of these, but also just to try to highlight how each of these might add or support or contribute to qualitative movement diagnosis, because it gives you a really good idea of your approach for your model that you'll be developing as well. Okay, so that's kind of the framework for our approach here over the next few slides. Okay, so again, we have biomechanics, motor development, motor learning, and pedagogy, so teaching, as the major subdiscipline contributors to QMD, or qualitative movement diagnosis. So we'll go through that. So first off, biomechanics. Again, it's a very mechanistic, or exploring the physical parameters that apply to human movement and our biology. So from here, we kind of look at deterministic models, looking at skills in particular, but then largely it gives us our QMD. So let's see how that happens. So again, being very logical and very physics kind of based or physical realm mechanically based, we get this biomechanical model where the observation of performance and identification of errors, these ranking of faults and instructions to the performer. Okay, so each of these things, they kind of link into this very, again, deterministic model. And the reason I say that, what does deterministic model mean? Well, it's kind of like a if-then. It's a very finite in scope. So when you're looking at the deterministic model, you're really saying, here's a gold standard. These are the exact parameters. Anything outside of that is wrong. And so there's only one hyper-efficient, hyper-effective way to do things that's purely based off of physics. This is the way it must be. This is the way, right? And so ultimately, they start with this kind of hierarchical sequential model where you have your end result, whatever your goal is for the skill. You have mechanical correlates that ultimately give you a result. And at the end, you try to figure out what the exact each individual factors contribute to the mechanical correlates to contribute to the best result. Okay, let's use a real application here. So let's look at long jump. Okay, so long jump, trying to get as far as you can. That's ultimately the goal, right? So based off a deterministic model, what does that look like? Well, if distance is our ultimate end result, what are some mechanical quantities we need to consider? Well, takeoff distance. Okay, so What is happening at that point where you're taking off? What's happening in flight? During that flight distance, what's happening there? And then when you're landing, what's happening there? Okay, and then you break those down into subcomponents. So body position, initial and change as far as the takeoff point. In the air, what's the speed, the angle of the takeoff, relative height, air resistance. These are all physical factors that will contribute to the distance of flight. And then last but not least, landing. Where's the body at touchdown? What actions happen? Do you fall forward or backwards when you land? And that all contributes to this, right? So it's very, very here's the goal. Let's break it down to the subcomponents. And taking this approach, so I really want to highlight this because when you're analyzing your skill, I want to encourage you to do this at least once for your skill. Again, it depends what it is, because these sort of factors here will be a good indication or a good start as to figuring out something called your critical features. And we'll have another lecture about this and more specifically. But what are the most crucial, fundamental aspects of a movement that have to be there in order for the movement to occur successfully? Right? Physically, by necessity, when you do a model like this, it's telling you what you need. Okay, so again, I really want to encourage you to at least attempt one of these when you're going through your skills and trying to start your IMAPs, okay? Or IMAGs, sorry. Okay. Another just brief example, 100-meter sprint, total time to run, average speed, and the distance you have to achieve to do 100 meters, but the goal is to run it fast. How fast? What time can you do it in? So your average speed is stride length and stride frequency. Pretty rudimentary, and then obviously frequency has some factors that it depends on. But that's probably the most straightforward that you can get as far as a deterministic model ultimately. Maybe a little simpler would be like a jab in boxing, but even then, it can be relatively straightforward. It can also get very complex. So not that you'd ever need to do this, but if you're looking at a wheelchair discus throw, there's a lot of variables that you can break down. There's a lot of physics happening here, right? Okay, so ultimately the pros and cons here with a deterministic model or a biomechanical approach is, the pros is based on physics. There are laws that apply to every person doing this action and movement. The downside is it creates a universal goal where all movers have to do this in order to achieve, right? You have to do certain things in order to achieve this. But that's not always necessarily the case. If you want to watch these golf swings on your own, I highly suggest you do it. Here's the link here. You should be able to pull it from the PowerPoint lecture posted online for you pretty easily. But I just want to explain, and you'll see in each of these weird golf swings that some golf swings that are very outside of what be considered a gold standard end up getting quite far. Okay, so they produce a fairly good swing. But I just wanted to communicate one instance of this where, with squats and looking at the dynamic theory of movement. So when people are squatting, based off of their physiology, there are certain things that by necessity need to change. For example, if someone's really tall versus really short, their center of gravity will change. If someone has a really long femur length, they by necessity have to change how they perform the skill to be able to do it well. So having one finite gold standard doesn't work. Again, hip joint angle during a squat definitely needs to be considered as well. Okay, so there's that. Plus, there's no room for innovation. If physics dictates that this is the best way to perform a skill, and the physical world doesn't change, where can you innovate from? Where can technique or skill improve from if there's already a gold standard to strive for that's being achieved? Okay. So there's definitely some faults here, and that's where your models look to pick things up and correct or improve upon. Okay. Oh, that's going to play. Okay. We'll skip that just for time's sake for you. But one of the benefits that's come out of this deterministic approach is the systematic process of movement analysis. So your QMD, essentially. This is more or less the original itineration of it. And you can see you pre-observe, so you look at the movement. And again, critical features is going to be something huge that we come back to. You plan a way to observe this movement. You observe it. You diagnose what is and isn't great about it. What are the main errors that need correcting, and then you correct it. Okay, and again, we'll revisit this quite a bit. But ultimately, the take home here at this point in time for you is this deterministic model is largely based off of physics and biomechanics. Okay, narrows focus. Yeah. Okay, we've covered most of these already. But I just wanted to highlight one thing where this is kind of my squat example here, the disadvantage where everyone's bodies kind of move to achieve a goal slightly differently, right? And this model doesn't always allow for that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so motor development. So that was 1151 for you. This is 1195 motor development. So what can we pull from this to help us out? Well, if you recall, motor development is the changes of motor capacity over a lifetime, but it also gives us a lot of different factors that we can utilize and leverage for us when we're using or developing a qualitative movement model or our IMAGs. Okay. One of the things that this model helps, and we get a lot of it from the fundamental movement patterns or fundamental movement skills, the FMS, is identifying developmental stages. And so through that, we kind of have this logic decision tree scoring system and mapping that we can utilize for certain skills. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if we know children catch in a certain order where their palms will be up or they'll face inward to catch things, we can say that that's a step 1 or 2 based off of where they're at. So it gives us this kind of hierarchical and stepwise framework to move from. So if you remember this, we take a look at a throw. It's a pretty good looking throw. We can see that it's categorized into a sequential order. This is what helps build some qualitative models. And we can know that we can rank these. We can look at these and we can say, there is, one movement that needs to happen before another, that needs to happen before another, right? And sure enough, we have our stage 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so it gives us a ranking capacity based off of just qualitatively looking at things. We don't know the rate of the throw. We don't know the speed of the arm. We don't know any of this information other than just visibly observing and looking at certain factors, right? Particularly the arm position. Where is the leg stepping? What is the body's position as far as the trunk's rotation? That's all qualitative descriptive terms, right? Okay. So the advantages, obviously develops developmental changes. It creates that hierarchy to observational movement, which is very useful when we're trying to systematically look at movement qualitatively or from an observational perspective. And the disadvantages, trying to compare adults' skills to one another. For example, once we reach a certain threshold of throwing, that's where these developmental models fall short. But I can guarantee I do not throw nearly as well as anyone that might be on one of the varsity baseball teams, right? So there's a clear difference between novice and experts, but these models don't really help with that. And identifying key features that relatively improve performance. Again, so once So taking my skill and trying to improve upon it, it doesn't really help identify key features that way. So again, just a little bit of a missing component there. Okay, so motor learning, another major component here. We won't go through detail now, but just to remind you what it is. There's different capacities for short-term application or correcting movement. So ideally, this is going to be in your intervention component of your models. But as far as where this contributes to the greater application of a qualitative movement diagnosis or movement model overall, is really about improving or correcting or intervening, right? So again, taking my skill as a thrower or catcher, trying to improve upon that. Well, that's going to take some motor learning things, such as giving feedback. One of which is most important would be augmented. So augmented is external or extrinsic feedback that generally comes from someone else. But knowledge of results, I can just look. Sometimes I know if I can see if I've caught a ball or not. And so that's that knowledge of result. Knowledge of performance generally is given back by a coach or someone. So if one of you, if someone on the team baseball team was trying to coach me on how to catch better or throw better, they'd give me feedback on how I was moving, right? And again, that's largely where your models are gonna come into play with your intervention. And then we have different types of frequencies. So depending on who the learner is, will dictate what sort of frequency they need feedback. So newer learners need more continuous feedback. Some people can have just, after 5 attempts, you give them one piece of feedback and they can work on that. Faded, you start with lots, but then slowly trail off. And then bandwidth depends on how the person's executing their skill. Okay, so again, there's no real advantage or disadvantages to how motor learning contributes to the overall model. It's just how well and where the best fit of motor learning is. So how do we pick the best way to help a certain performer improve? And that's going to be part of your intervention of your model. And the last component, but certainly not least, is teaching or pedagogy. Okay, and this has a very significant contribution to qualitative movement models. One of the main one is it's an observational model. It really provides feedback and a systematic way to look at movement without using biomechanical equipment or influence, and it's strongly qualitative. So what does that all look like? Well, something like this. So you can break down a movement. In this case, we have different aspects of the body, and we can break it into different phases over timing. So just like that throw that we saw outlined in motor development aspect, and then we can write what's going on qualitatively for each part of these aspects. And this is really a large part of where your model is based off as well, right? So how is the body weight happening in prep? Well, it's leaning back. Okay, then during the action phase, it shifts to the front foot during the throw. And then during the follow through, body weight's all on the front foot. So you can really successfully produce a really good model from here. And the other great component of this too is a lot of what is given as far as feedback is directly translatable into cues to give the learner to be able to improve their movement. Okay, so they're very short, specific, and actionable, right? Okay, if someone's body weight wasn't shifting forward with that throw, you could just say, shift your weight forward, right? Okay, the disadvantages is it doesn't really have a logical or sequential component in the sense that it doesn't apply biomechanical principles. We're not looking at limb speed. We're not looking at forces applied or anything like that, which kind of lacks a little bit of that information. Okay. But yeah, interestingly, we can take a brief look. Yeah, we got some time. We'll do this briefly.
We have today is a spiral, which is essentially a 1 foot glide. But the thing is that we have...
Okay, so this is just a little look at some hockey players trying to learn through verbal cueing and a pedagogical approach how to do certain skills on ice that they've never done before, right?
You have to make it look good. A spiral requires that you have 2 legs straight.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on.
Whoa. Okay. I thought this was the easiest thing first.
I have a question. Can I drop F-bombs?
Okay.
I can?
We
Actually?
can.
Oh, fucking right. So let's go. It looks like it requires way more flexibility than I would expect. And I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that one off.
Yeah, that looks like I'm going to toe pick on this one.
Hockey skates don't have toe picks and figure skates do. A lot of the tricks require the use of toe picks, the jumps and the spins and the hops.
I think I can go home, guys.
We're going to start learning the spiral on the wall. So you're going to...
Yeah, so for a bit more context, these are all players or coaches of a New York women's hockey team.
Put one hand on the wall. Use your arms for balance. And extend one leg back. Okay, let's just see if you guys can balance like that first. Legs straight, turning out the foot. Oh, look at that. That looks good.
Is that me? There you
Not
go.
you. Point your toes. Turn out. And then tip your body and see if you can extend your leg higher. That's it. And then you want to lift your chest and your chin up. That way you don't tip forward. So the next step is to try this.
Great, yeah. So again, just we'll watch a little bit more because it's kind of fun. But the observed aspects qualitatively that weren't there. So for example, legs straight, legs higher, body forward. The descriptive components literally were the teaching components. Okay, lift your leg higher, straighten the leg, turn the foot out. So those are critical components that could be stated for each part of this movement that were, again, just easily translated into
gliding out
the
on the ice.
intervention.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Back.
Yep, you
Keep
go,
looking
baby.
up, look up. Straighten your legs.
Oh my gosh, he's not going to follow this. He's going to run the board.
Please tell me it was good. Yeah?
It's okay. You okay?
Yeah, I'm
He
fine.
caught himself.
Watch your toe pick.
Just my ego.
Just my ego.
All right.
Toe pick. All right. I highly suggest go ahead and again grab that clip and watch a bit more on your own time as well. If it's just a fun video to watch. They do some jumps and other stuff too. Yeah, and again, that should be able to be found on your PowerPoints slides for this lecture.
The challenge we have for you today is a spiral.
Okay, so yeah, to summate and wrap up, we have our 4 components here that contribute to a qualitative movement diagnosis. So all like a model essentially that's pre-established that I definitely want to encourage you to use it as a platform and use as a foundation to further develop your models off of. And all the different components that they use in here in each, right? That contribute to that model overall. Okay, and ultimately what we end up is we get this nice cyclic model for the QMD where we have some sort of preparation or knowledge gathering, we observe the skill, we evaluate, diagnose what does and doesn't need correction, and then we give our intervention. And we repeat that as needed, going back to the preparation phase every once in a while. Okay, great. So covered a handful of things. Intro to your projects that you'll be doing, introduction to qualitative methods and research approaches, which you'll use for your first assignment and later for your IMAG overall, which is your project. And then getting a really good peek into how an integrative model can look. And again, we're going to use this model as a foundation and a starting point for you to build your projects out and around. Okay, your own guidelines are going to be heavily based on this. Okay, well, that's all we have for the lecture today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Other than that, hope you are getting excited and already have maybe a skill that you'll be thinking about doing or excited to explore and do your project and assignments on. Okay, bye for now.